Hello and welcome to this week's IRQTC training tips video. I'm Brian Traskos, the founder and director of the Institute for Rehabilitative Qigong and Tai Chi. This week, we're going to talk about how to reach for the success that you really want in your life. Now, before we talk about that, let's ask ourselves another question. Let's ask ourselves, why don't we reach for the success that we really want in our lives? We all want different things that we would call successful. And some people want a bigger house, some people want a smaller house. Some people want a better, a different school for their kids. Some people want to change their career, have a different or better job. Some people want to have a different or better relationship with a spouse or a partner or even a child or a parent. Now, we all want different things that we would call successful. And there's no judgment on any of these things, right? They're all fine. The idea is that we all feel the urge of life. We all feel the urge of life growing through us to expand ourselves and become more of who we really are. And that may show up on the outside, it may show up in the inside, but it's going to show up somewhere because that urge is just always flowing through us. And that urge flowing through us, that's the idea of success. It shows up as what we want to have more of or do more of or become more of in our life. That's that energy flowing through us, and that's what we would, for each of us as individuals, call successful. So why don't we reach for the success that we really want in our lives? Well, there's three basic excuses we use why we don't reach for that success. And the three basic excuses are there's not enough time, there's not enough money, or it's not the right time. Those are the three basic excuses. But those three excuses basically are just a cover-up for a deeper something else going on. And that's actually how we perceive the world. We know that actually our physiology runs itself primarily based on how we perceive the world to be. And we all perceive the world a little bit differently. There's some cool research to show around physiology is that if we perceive the world to be hyper challenging or threatening, we will actually have more inflammatory responses in our body. And if we perceive the world to be a safe place or supportive place, we will have less inflammatory responses in our body. So we know that perception actually ends up altering our physiology. Now, for a second, let's step back even a little bit further and say, as far as the Qigong and Tai Chi paradigm is concerned, we know that the universe is created as a whole, right? Everything that's created in the universe is whole. There's nothing left out of that equation. Everything is interconnected. Everything supports and complements one another. Everything is created as a whole. In nature, we don't see half trees growing. Right? We don't see a half of a squirrel running across the power line with a cracker in their mouth. There's nothing created half out there. Everything is created as a whole. Now, as people, we can perceive halves even if the whole still exists. Now, how do we perceive a half of something? Well, a very simple example is this. I'll give you two examples. One example is two people can be looking at something happening out there in the world, a sporting event, say, and one team scores a touchdown, and everyone can agree that a touchdown was scored. And the two people watching that, one person could be elated and the other person could be completely demoralized. Right? So they're going to have different perceptions of that event that occurred, and that different perception is going to affect their physiology differently. The other idea of that perceiving one side versus the other side is if you've ever been in an argument with someone and you're staunchly defending your position, and that other person is staunchly defending their position, and neither one of you can see any good in the other person's opinion. That's what we call being polarized in the mind. You can only see one side of the whole equation. Now, when we come to Tai Chi, we recognize that with our Tai Chi symbol, that everything is a whole. Everything in the universe is inside of this circle that we would call wholeness. Our mind, though, as people, can perceive either yin or yang. We can perceive left or right. We can perceive top and bottom. We can perceive inside and outside, although always both of those exist. If we get our attention fixated on just one side of that equation, like when you're in an argument with somebody and you're defending your position, we say that your mind is polarized. You can't see the whole, you're focused on only half of it. Okay? Now, we could use the archetypal expression of yin and yang in lots of different ways with talking about complementary opposites. Let's consider for a moment the idea of challenge and support. Let's say that yang is challenge and yin is support. Those are opposites that exist within a whole. Now, why don't we reach for the success that we really want in our lives? It's primarily because our vision or our psyche is polarized into thinking that that thing we really want is too challenging. It's too much money. It's too much time. It's too much work. It's too much effort. It's too much sacrifice. Right? In other words, it's too much challenge. So this urge that's flowing through us, these thoughts that come through our mind, you know what they are? They come back again and again and again and again, and you're just not acting on them, so they keep coming back again and again and again and again. And every time you don't act on it, it becomes almost like harder to live with yourself, right? The regret starts to build that you're actually not doing the things that you really, really want to do in your life. And the reason you're stopping yourself is because you're perceiving and you're polarized that it's just too much challenge. Moving to the new town, too much challenge. Taking the new job, too much challenge. Working on your relationship, too much challenge, right? Taking the course that you really want to take for professional development or personal development, too much challenge. I've got to do too many things to get it organized, even though I really, really want to do it. So the reason we don't reach for the things that we really want in our lives is because we perceive that there's too much challenge. Now, everything is created as a whole. Everything in the universe is always a whole. You can never have too much challenge because there's always support. Okay? When you're polarized on this side, you only see too much challenge and you won't move. You won't do anything. If you're on this side, you'll only ever see too much support and you won't move and you won't do anything. Right? There certainly are people out there where they're weighted on hand and foot. Right? They never have to do anything for themselves. Why would they ever do anything for themselves? Why would they ever urge themselves to grow? They'll ask other people to do it for them, but they won't do it for themselves because they're polarized into too much support. So if we really want to be empowered in our lives and go after the things that we want in our lives, we have to realize that we need to balance our psyche and see the whole Tai Chi, not just one side or the other. So instead of being polarized on one side, or polarized on the other side, the magic is right here. When we reside in the center of the circle, we are experiencing both challenge and support in equal measure, always in equal measure. If there's a small step we want to take for something, and it's a small amount of challenge, then we get a small amount of support. What about this? What if we wanted to take on a bigger challenge? By then the law of Tai Chi is that a bigger challenge comes with more support. Now, if we're polarized to only see the challenge, we won't be able to see that support. Well, we won't know where it is. We won't be able to find it. But it's always there. We have to know that it's there. Now, how does this show up in the body with physical rehabilitation? Because we're holistic beings. We're holistic beings, and we are body, mind, and spirit. So when we have a dysfunction, such as a polarization in the mind, it's going to also show up in our emotions. It's going to also show up in our bodies. It's going to show up in all of us because we're whole, right? And the way we function in one way is the way we function in all ways. So if we want to start to unravel our polarized perceptions of things, we want to know how it's going to look in the body, how it's going to look in our emotions, and how it's going to look in our psychology. In our body, for physical rehabilitation, it might look something like this. If we're doing a rehab program, maybe you're doing a rehab program, or maybe you're working with someone who's doing a rehab program, and the idea is to help the arm come higher to the side. Maybe there's a shoulder injury or something like that. And in the past, it's been painful to lift the arm to the side if you're polarized in this side of things, where you are like addicted to support, you'll say, I'm not going to move it because it's going to hurt. I'm afraid it's going to hurt, so I'm not going to move it. No, I'm keeping it right here. I'm keeping it supported. I'm not moving it. Now, if you're polarized to the other side with hyper challenge idea, then you'll be like, ah, 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 and you'll be into that no pain, no gain scenario. When actually, the more pain you have, the less gain you actually have. We know that now. This is how it works with our physiology. In our rehabilitative Qigong and Tai Chi programs, we call this working in the yellow zone, where when you move to the side, you move up into the area where you balance challenge and support, and then you return. And then back up into challenge and support balance, we call it the yellow zone, back down again, and back up again. Essentially, it's the Tai Chi zone as we do these movement patterns. And we know that when you work in those areas, you are technically reaching for the success that you really want in your life. You're actually practically doing that. How about in our emotions? Well, maybe you've known someone, or maybe you are someone who is afraid to ask for what you really want. Why aren't you asking for what you really want? Or why aren't you saying what you really want? Because you're afraid it's going to create too much pain, right? You're afraid it's going to create too much pain for you. You're afraid it's going to create too much pain in the people around you. You don't want to get the pushback. You don't want to get people upset with you. In other words, it's going to create too much pain and problem. So we actually don't act on it. It's like keeping our arm at our side. We're afraid it's just too much challenge. So I'm not going to act and ask for what I really want in my world, in my emotional world. And then in our psychology, remember this life just flowing through us all of the time, bringing us more ideas for expansion and growth and connection and wholeness in our world. But if we feel like, or we think that having those things is too challenging for us, then we bury it down deeper. We push it down. We try to put a cork in it. We try to put a lid on it. Because eventually, the pain of not having those things becomes too great. We regret it. We regret not doing it. I always wanted to travel to Europe. I always wanted to have kids. I always wanted to get married. And the fact is that you had plenty of opportunities to do that throughout your whole life. You had to have, because everything is always there. If you want it, then the opportunity is there for it right now. It might to you look like it's too challenging, but if you understand this, there's always support, right? If you want to go do something, the money is there to do it. Or the support to take care of your kids is to do it. Or the support to get a ride there is to do it, right? It's always there. It's already there. You just can't see it because we've been taught not to see it through our behavioral conditioning and lots of other factors, but that's the basic idea. So we start in the body. Think about in your body. When we practice Tai Chi and Qigong, when you can move in ways that feel both challenging and supportive, you are starting to shake up our ability, or basically shake up our polarized perceptions. You're creating the ability to see things as a whole. This will morph itself into your emotional life and the ability to ask for what you really want in your life, even though if it feels challenging, because you know the support exists. And it also grows up into our psychology and our spiritual evolution, where we become more confident in going after things that we really want in our lives on a regular basis, because we know that everything is created as a whole. So I hope that you take the opportunity very soon to go after the thing that you really want. You're supported in it, even if it feels challenging. You always have an equal balance of those two things. Thank you for joining me again this week for our IRQTC Training Tips newsletter, and I hope to see you at a training real soon. Take care. Bye-bye.